Hi guys, Kevin here. For a long time now I've wanted to do an update on the solar panels. I've gotten questions both on YouTube, Google Plus, and people contacting me trying to find out more about the solar system that we've had installed. And mine's a little unique because it's way out back here. It's on a rack mount system. It's way away from where my house is. And one of the biggest questions that I get all the time is, how expensive is it? And what's your return on investment? And fortunately today, Bill Edwards from Skyline Solar agreed to come over and subject himself to the YouTube video that we're going to put on here, and answer some of the questions that I really use to help me make my decision when I invested in this. It's expensive, especially the way that I did it, but it doesn't have to be that expensive. And I think Bill's going to go through these questions one by one and go through it. So Bill, I'll get out of the camera and let you continue right where you are. Okay,
thanks. Kevin. How you doing, everyone? Kevin gave me a list of questions. I'm going to go through them one by one just to give you an idea of what it takes to go solar. The first question in mind is, how do you determine the appropriate size of the system to install? And what we do is we take a look at your electric bill. We count up all our kilowatt hours that you use for the last 12 months, and we design your system on an annual basis. So what that means is we look at your cumulative year usage for kilowatt hours, and we know from the latitude and longitude of the location that we're going to install how many sun hours you actually see throughout the year. So that allows us to size the actual system. From an analytical perspective, we're looking for the system to face south as much as possible, facing to true south. That allows you to get the maximum production out of your system. Again, the geographical location determines where you're going to orient the system. In New York State, where we are, we do it at about a 30-degree angle, which you see in the background. As you go farther south, you can definitely tilt your panels down a little bit. Getting closer to the equator, the sun's going to be higher in the sky quicker in the year. As far as your layout of the land, we took a lot of pictures around Kevin's property, and it gave us a good idea of trees, shading, any sort of objects that would affect the production of the panels. That's also a thing that we utilize to properly design to cover your whole electric bill. Covering the whole electric bill is essential when we're designing the system, because if you use 1 kilowatt hour from the utility, you're going to pay quite a delivery charge on that. So when you generate a kilowatt hour credit from the utility, they actually give it back to you without a delivery charge. So it helps dramatically reduce the cost of the electricity. As far as the ground mount structure here, we are in an area where we see a lot of snow, so we try and keep the angle tilted a little more. It lets the snow slough off a little better. And again, as you go south, you can reduce the tilt angle because you won't see nearly the amount of snow that you would in the central New York region. For Kevin's application, we looked at his infrastructure, and the roof structure wouldn't have worked for him. The sheer size of this system, you'd need a large roof in order to fit this. Roof installations tend to be a lot more cost effective. It allows you to get rid of the cost and labor of installing this framework that we have the panels on. Sometimes it's beneficial to put them on the ground, even though it is more costly, because you can avoid the trees and you can face them due south at the proper tilt, which if you have an existing roof, it's quite difficult to find the perfect application due south and about a 25 to 30 degree tilt. The The framing is really the big difference. We utilize a roof structure with the trusses and the shingles, or a steel roof with the purlins and the steel to mount our equipment to. Everything is designed on a roof structure to be waterproof. All our installations are designed to flash underneath asphalt shingles, similar to any plumbing pipes or any penetrations that you would see in an asphalt shingle roof. And the same thing goes for the steel roofs. We use steel roof boots. So there's a significant cost difference in installation. For us, we base everything on a dollar per watt figure, and our typical installations for a roof around here are around $3 a watt now. And if you look at a ground mount installation, it's more around $3.50 a watt. That wattage is based on the nominal DC value of your solar array. So a 10,000 watt system, you can calculate the difference. 50 cents a watt, you're talking $5,000 difference. And with solar, the whole goal is to reduce your costs. So we want to do that if at all possible. So the difference between the cells, with Kevin's system here, we used a mono cell, which is a monocrystalline cell, which means when they manufacture the cells, it's one solid cell. The other kind of cells that you could encounter are polycrystalline cells, which basically means poly, more than one. So they combined partial cells to make one whole square that you see there. Each of these panels has 60 cells on it, and they combine them in parallel and series strings in order to produce the voltage and current necessary to produce the DC power to feed the inverters, or in Kevin's case, micro-inverters. There's also other systems, thin film, which is another technology. It's the same sort of idea where you're creating electron flow, not nearly as efficient. So you basically need to use 2 or 3 times the surface area, which again, you can see how much space we took up on Kevin's system. So it would be significant. Hopefully into the future, they're trying to develop thin film integrated into roofing products, siding products, and if at all possible in the future, your actual materials that you build a house out of can produce electricity for you. That's still a little bit down the road. Efficiencies. One of the big things with the mono cells, with being a singular cell, they have a little more efficiency to them versus the poly cells. And that's where you can tell the difference in the different solar manufacturers. They have an efficiency for the actual panels. Most 60 cell panels are about 3 1/4 foot wide by 5 1/2 foot wide, and you can have a 230 watt panel, you can have a 300 watt panel in the same square footage. The efficiency is what determines how much wattage you're going to get out of that surface area. The kilowatt hours, we also look at the different panels in situations where we have limited roof space in more urban areas. We're really looking to use a higher wattage panel so we can produce the necessary kilowatt hours. There's more cost to those panels because they're more power dense, but again, all these factors come into play when we're designing a system for a customer. Really the big thing that we're looking for is to create a lower cost for electricity. So the upfront investment is significant, but all our equipment is warranted for 25 years. Sometimes the central inverters are a little less for warranties, but we can also invest in a extended warranty plan, which allows us to offer the 25-year warranty, which there's not many things out there with a 25-year warranty. So inverters, Kevin has a micro-inverter system, and what that does is that takes the power which is produced in DC from the panel and inverts to AC right at the panel, right at the source. So essentially you're taking a 20 amp circuit, AC circuit, back to a typical electrical panel. The microinverters allow you to individually produce power for the panels. In a conventional central inverter system, for the most part, you would plug 10 to about a dozen DC panels together in series. The issue with that is when you have shading or you have any sort of snow on one of the panels, that panel becomes a load, essentially taking the power from your other 9 panels and absorbing it instead of working with the panels to send the power to the inverter.
So Bill, let me just ask, so if you had a chimney on your roof and you had solar panels around that chimney would probably cast a shadow on 1 or 2 of the panels throughout the day as the sun went across the skyline. And that would affect if I understand this correctly, affect the net results, your total results, if you didn't use microinverters.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And the thing with that is we have shading cameras and we take pictures all over the ground or all over the roof, and we can actually see when we look at our analysis within that certain sector of the roof, if the chimney's going to come into play. Hopefully we have enough room to avoid that. If we don't, then we start to look at designing it with microinverters. One thing about the microinverters that are nice is they're plug and play. So Kevin's installation actually went in 2 phases, and with him having the microinverters, he actually reduced his costs for the additional panels by going with the plug and play microinverter system in the first place. So we really take the time to discuss with the customer their options, because there is a wide variety of ways that you can try and go solar. Education is really the biggest part of, I believe, my work with the customers, because a properly informed customer allows them to make a decision that they're happy with for the long term. This system is a grid-tied system. What that means is the microinverters actually interact with the utility here, and they synchronize their 60 hertz signal, and they provide the power back onto the grid when Kevin's not using all the power he's creating. So the grid-tied system is great. It's eliminated the need for the battery bank. That's one of the biggest misconceptions with solar, is people think as soon as you have to go solar, you have to have batteries. And batteries are great if you're 2 miles off the road, or you're in an isolated area where you just want to feed a camp or something like that. But batteries have a shelf life. There's maintenance to them. We found that for most installations, it wouldn't be practical to even try and integrate a battery bank, because with the grid-tied system, it works quite well with the utility, and at least in upstate New York, we don't have too many power outages. But again, we really focus on the customer's needs. If they're concerned with a battery backup, having their household function properly, we actually have systems where we can have a grid-tied utility system and also have a charge controller and a battery bank that work in conjunction with that. So you can have the best of both worlds, but we really take the time to talk to the customer and make sure that they understand that there's a significant investment with the battery banks, and again, just educate them to make sure that when they're done with their system and we've turned it over to them, that they're happy with what they purchased. As far as codes go, we always deal with the local code enforcement. The ground mounts in our area, the only thing that we really have to deal with is proper footing. We have to go down at least 42 inches in this area for frost. Other than that, we're not having to worry too much with the codes. We get on a roof, we have an engineer that makes sure that the roof can properly hold the panels. 99% of the time, the roofs in this area are designed for a significant snow load, so we haven't run into too many instances. And to add to that, the solar panels only add about 3 pounds per square foot. The panels are about 40 to 45 pounds, and they're 18 square foot approximately. So There's not really a ton of weight added to the roof, but to satisfy the code, they like to have an engineer signed and stamped a letter saying that our installation isn't going to affect the roof surface. Again, one of the big things is our code enforcers haven't done a lot with solar, so I really take the time to educate them. A lot of times they're quite intrigued about it, so when I help them along with understanding, they usually work quite well with us on that fact. The incentives within our state, New York State has a grant program called NYSERDA. It's an acronym for New York State Renewable Program. NYSERDA is something I'm involved with. I'm state certified and actually nationally certified to install solar, and the incentives are quite good in New York State. Everybody that pays into the utility has a line item on their bill where they're paying into that renewable portfolio, so it allows you to apply for the grants. Right now it's at 70 cents a watt. Originally, when Kevin installed a couple years ago, it was up around $1.75 a watt. The whole goal of the program is really, as more funding gets used, they diversify by reducing the dollar per watt to allow for more projects to be funded. Their ultimate goal is to not have to provide grants, but yet drive down the cost of installation through myself and all the wholesalers, everything along that chain of the solar, to provide a cost-effective product without the incentives. And one of the big parts of the incentives, which unfortunately looks like in the future might change, is there's a 30% federal tax credit. It's unlimited, so you can install as many as you want, and there's no cap to that. So essentially, a third of your investment that you pay towards the solar will come back in an income tax credit. So one of the big things when we're working with customers is really just informing them of their cost structure and making sure, if they don't do their own accounting, to reference their tax preparer. That's a big thing, because you will invest substantially for solar, and usually a large portion, maybe sometimes even half of your investment can come back through deferred income tax. Really, there's a lot of benefits to doing solar. Obviously, going green, the whole purpose of all these solar installations throughout New York State is to really take a burden off of the main transmission lines. There's no moving parts with solar, so there's very little maintenance. The sun comes out, current flows, you're making power. So there's this big push for solar because it's helping take the stress off of the main infrastructure of the grid. Other benefits, obviously, there's no pollution, there's no moving parts, we're not burning coal or fossil fuels, we're not taking things out of the ground. Absolutely no pollution. There is a certain sense of energy independence within this solar infrastructure. You're confident you're going to make what we designed for you in kilowatt hours, so you can comfortably operate within your household without worrying about what the bill's going to be next month. As far as jobs go, we started out with me just installing with one guy, and we have about half a dozen employees within our infrastructure, and we're hoping to expand this year with a couple larger systems. Hopefully they come through for us. So there's really no maintenance. The rain washes the pollen off. In this area, we don't have a ton of dust issues like you'd have in the Southwest or anywhere out west. But as far as maintenance, cost operation, they're all solid state pieces of equipment, so there's really very little things once we turn the system on, commission the system, that could cause us to have to put any time or money into it. One of the big things that I've been working with bank appraisers is trying to understand the value that's created when you install something like this. because there is a significant investment, and it's kind of difficult for me to tell this, but I like to be honest. And your investment on this solar, say you spend $20,000, it doesn't generate $20,000 in value within your household. If you go to a bank and you say, I spent 20 grand, my house should be worth 20 more because I invested in solar, they're going to say, well, you only make about $2,000 a year in electricity. So that's all the value that we can quantify within your actual solar installation. Their reasoning is they only quantify for that year. They do not transfer the value of the solar, because if you transferred that $20,000 to the next person that bought your house, essentially charging them 20 grand more, they would be just prepaying for electricity. Kind of something that I went back and forth with, because when you look at something like this, you would expect the bank to say, well, your value has increased tens of thousands of dollars, but the way the banks look at it, there's not that sort of value in solar. They just look at the electricity you're offsetting. So a lot of solar installers will go in and tell you that while you're spending 20 grand, your house is worth 20 grand more, and I don't believe that's the case, and you want to make sure you question anybody that's telling you that, because you don't want to go into a project to this magnitude with false pretenses. There's different ways of going solar. Kevin purchased it with money in a cash process. He had the ability to absorb the tax credits, and that's always the way I'd suggest to try and go, to own it. But we also offer leasing programs. A lot of people are on more of a fixed income. You're towards retirement age. You don't pay taxes on a lot of your IRAs and your pensions, things like that. So we offer a leasing plan where it's guaranteed to reduce your cost of electricity. It locks it in at a fixed rate, so you know what your budget's going to be for the month. The leasing company, there's a lot more paperwork. You know, they do own the product, and you pay them for the power they produce. But in our opinion, it's better to lock in your costs at a lower rate than you're paying now. And eventually you'll get to a point where they transfer ownership somewhere between 10 and 20 years down the road. They'll sell you it for $1. So you have a means to an end, and that's one of the biggest things with solar, is you're trying to eliminate an electric bill. Whether it takes 5 years, 15 years, 20 years, you have a means to an end, where when you're paying that electric bill, until you've decided you don't want to use electricity anymore, which most people use electricity, you're going to have to either pay that bill, or you can look into the alternatives of solar. Visually appealing, we want to make sure that the aesthetics of the system, it really sells itself. From an installer standpoint, we focus heavily on the mechanics of the system, making sure everything's straight, everything looks streamlined. There is a lot of times where I go into roofs where people want to put it on the roof, but it's going to be cut up, it's going to look like a missing tooth, just not look aesthetically pleasing. So we really try and work with the customer, because we believe that our installations should sell themselves visually as much as financially cost effective. The return on investment, we really try and get it to about a 5-year payback. If you can see what your electric bill cost is for about 60 months, you multiply that out, and your cost after tax credits and depreciation, anything you can use to reduce your initial investment, it should make it to about 5, maybe 6 years. People that own a business out of their home, they're kind of the perfect storm, because we're in New York State, we have a federal tax credit, we have a New York State personal tax credit, and we also, within your accounting, can depreciate the investment if you have a small business out of home. Dairy farmers are the perfect storm. We have all sorts of grants through the USDA that we can write for the customers also, on top of all the things that I've mentioned. You know, really, solar works. There's no moving parts. It's all solid state, just like the receptacles and any sort of electrical infrastructure you have at your house now. As long as it's installed properly, there's very few issues that you can encounter over the long term. The warranties involved are substantial. Usually the panels are 20 to 25 to almost 30 years of warranty in them. One of the big things we focus on that is where we purchase our products from. We research the distributors, we research the panel products, and really it's critical for us to see a history there, a sort of resume within our network of distribution, to make sure when we do have an issue, whatever it may be, those people are going to be there. I wouldn't suggest shopping for the most cost-effective over-the-internet price, because you can't really reach out and get to them. They're across the country or overseas, and a lot of times customer service really can lack when you don't have that sort of good feel with who you're purchasing your products from. So I really appreciate Kevin giving me an opportunity to get the word out to everybody, because solar is something that everybody should really be focused towards, and hopefully we'll have a lot of videos in the future where all the questions you guys come up with from this video, we can get another one out to you folks. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill. I really appreciate it, and you have a great day. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.